Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show. Happy Halloween to everybody. We will be talking about who should be the Bucs wide receiver one on today's show. So hopefully you guys are dressing up or already dressed up for a Halloween party or doing something this weekend. Hope you enjoy tons of candy. Maybe go trick-or-treating with your kids or whatever the case may be. But hope everybody has a fun Halloween. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from pewterreport.com, Adam Slavon. Adam, how are we doing?
Doing well, Matt. Happy Halloween to everyone listening. And it's quite a treat being on here with you on this Thursday. And we have quite a bit to get into, diving in further to who could be the Bucs wide receiver one going forward. Heard from Todd Bowles today, Baker Mayfield, and the locker room as well. Got a lot of interesting insights. So happy to be on with you.
We did for sure. We'll recap some of that, obviously get into the main discussion. I'm already loving these comments. I was laughing right off the jump from Tanner James Golf, who said, "Happy Halloween. This team scares me." Callie Buck says, "Halloween came early. This has been a nightmare." Also want to give a shout out to Thomas Pelakudis, who became a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. We really appreciate that. And Thomas also had a question. Better question is, who should be our starting middle linebacker? We'll get to that as well, for sure. Also, because it's Halloween, please feel free to put in the chat either your favorite candy, what you're going as this year. So, Adam, what's your favorite candy?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That could be a good debate. I would have to say Reese's are definitely up there. I like Butterfinger. Those would probably be my top two. You?
Cool. Yeah, Reese's is definitely mine without a doubt. I like the peanut butter cups specifically. Was having a discussion today with Brianna Dix, the Bucs team writer, a couple other media people as well, about candy corn, Reese's Pieces.
Ooh.
I don't love Reese's Pieces as much as the Reese's itself, but nonetheless, feel free to put in your favorite candy or what costume you're wearing, whatever the case may be. As JB says, Twix F the world. Wasp says Toblerone. I also went as a wrestler this year, but like an inflatable wrestler where it has the mask, it blows up. There's like a fan in the costume, and then there's like a little wrestler on the side that's like wrapping its arms around like my neck and then my waist as well. So that was my costume this year. And you are being a character from a show, right?
Yeah, the show X-Files. I'm going as Agent Mulder, so pretty excited for that.
Cool.
Yaya Diaby said it looked pretty slick, so
nice. All right, so got the Yaya seal of approval.
Yeah.
Pewter 941 says peanut M&Ms. Great choice there. Christopher Cole says peanut butter cups and M&Ms. Callie Bucks showing their disdain for candy corn. So I'll continue to throw that stuff up during the whole show. I can't comment on every single piece of candy, but please feel free. We want you guys to be a part of the show. It's almost like a candy roll call in a sense.
Ooh.
So, yeah, feel free to chime in when you want to. Also, we have a super chat, by the way. Paul, a.k.a. OG Baker Bro, gifted one Pewter Report membership, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Then Paul follows that up with a $5 super chat who says, "I'm a fan of Adam Slavon's work, but I am not ready for the NFL draft content. It's like stores putting up Christmas stuff in September." Really appreciate that, Paul.
Yeah.
We actually planned on talking about that on today's show. For continuity's sake, we will get to that, but we're going to save that for, a little bit later in the show. But nonetheless, thank you so much for the comment, and respect the comment as well. I understand, some fans don't want to talk about the draft just yet. The Buccaneers are 4-4, and they want to keep their season afloat. For sure. And I think going to this game, Adam, the Bucs have to rely on the ground game. You need Cade Otton to keep doing what he's done over the past 2 or 3 weeks. But the wide receivers are going to have to make their impact felt on this game. The question is, which wide receiver is going to make their impact felt?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you kind of look at the production that the Bucks got from each wide receiver going into against the Falcons and going into this game, you really like what you saw from Rakim Jarrett and a limited amount of snaps. He played, I believe you said 20 snaps offensively,
20 snaps total, yeah.
had 3 catches.
Offensively, yeah.
Yeah, for 58 yards, and was really the best option for Baker Mayfield in getting yards down the field. Nobody else really was able to. Jalen McMillan had 4 catches for 35 yards. Sterling Shepard had 3 catches for 18 yards. They weren't really able to stretch the field like he did. And he almost had the big play, the Hail Mary at the end. It was a couple feet in. Maybe he makes that catch there. But going forward, I really like Rakim Jarrett kind of fitting that Chris Godwin role on this offense as somebody who is physical and is able to create separation. Baker Mayfield today, he said that Rakim is really explosive, and he also pointed out his contested catch ability, which for Chris Godwin, that's one of his calling cards.
Yes.
He's able to win contested catches. So I thought Mayfield saying that Rakim's ability to do so really stood out, and it kind of points to maybe the Bucs lean on him more going forward. Remember, Jarrett, he was undrafted free agent in the same undrafted free agent class as Shan Tucker. And Jarrett,
Yeah.
when he had opportunities, he's been able to shine and make plays. You kind of already have seen Tucker do it. I think Jarrett can do it as well.
Yeah, Jarrett had his moment briefly, but last year it was a debacle of a game overall. But when the Bucks went to San Fran, who ironically they play in 2 weeks, and he had this big play where it was a catch and run, and he ended up tearing his quad on the play, and that's what put him on injured reserve. But the fact that he was able to essentially muscle through like a like not many people could like run full speed and carry a couple of NFL defenders
Yeah.
on you as you're heading up the field with a torn quad. Like the everyday person cannot do that. And I think that kind of speaks to what Todd Bowles was talking about today with Rakim Jarrett about his toughness. I mean, he had a knee surgery this year. It sounded like pretty serious the way that Bowles had described it in the past. So he's got a bulldog mentality, and there's only so many things you can do with injuries, and hopefully he's not an injury-prone type of guy like, I don't know, Servassier Dennis that we've seen, Jamel Dean, things of that nature. But he has the bulldog mentality, in my opinion, that I think receivers need to have, because receivers and cornerbacks are certainly obviously two different positions. That's not why you guys tune into the show. But it's such a like every single play is like more of a win-loss opportunity than I think a lot of other positions out there. So Jarrett made the most of his opportunity with 20 snaps, and I would agree. I think he should be wide receiver 1 because more than anything else, I think we've had enough of a sample size of some of the other receivers that have been involved this season. And yeah, Jalen McMillan missed a couple of games with a hamstring injury.
Yeah.
Sterling Shepard didn't get called up until a couple of games into the season. Trey Palmer had a concussion. Palmer, I still think, can be your wide receiver 1. Again, in the realm of no Mike Evans and no Chris Godwin. Because Palmer looked good against the Eagles. Maybe the Eagles are just the team that he is a destroyer of, because he had the catch and run last year in the playoffs against them. Then he played very well against them this year when he had another touchdown. And he actually kind of came to life against the Ravens on Monday Night Football when Mike and Chris were like officially out of the game. He ended up being, I think, second in receptions or in receiving yards that game, or whatever the case may be. So I wouldn't hold the phone just yet for Trey Palmer, but McMillan is tough to put my finger on it, Sly. We were both there for training camp, and he absolutely lit it up and was terrific. But then all of a sudden, the regular season, maybe it's just a little more complex with the scheme. Maybe the hamstring's still bothering him, but yeah, he made 4 catches, but he did nothing with it. Like, there's not that breakaway ability. It wasn't the ability to make people miss. It was just kind of, I don't know. It reminded me of like the way that we get on Mike Evans for not really being able to have yards after the catch, except Mike's already down the field. McMillan, it just feels like he's kind of holding on for dear life at times.
Yeah, and I think that's for him, it's like the newness of being in the league, playing with Baker Mayfield. I don't know if McMillan's up to speed yet. Like the talent's there. You saw it on display throughout training camp, even in the preseason. I remember he made that 28-yard catch where he was leaping on the sideline. Like the talent's there, but I think for McMillan, it's still really developing a rapport with Mayfield. And there's a one play that stuck out to me, Matt, when McMillan went across the middle of the field, created separation, was
Yeah.
wide open, and he finished his route instead of looking for the ball from Mayfield, and that would have been a huge play for McMillan. Like he would have scored an easy touchdown on that one, maybe changes the ball game. And I don't think he's ready to finish those plays yet and kind of make those big plays. So like that points to Jarrett maybe being the wide receiver one, and even Sterling Shepard maybe still getting more snaps above McMillan.
Yeah, Shepard's case is very interesting too. I was actually about to pull his stats up real quick because he's made his presence felt in each game. Sterling Shepard, I'm talking about, and a lot of this again was with Mike and Chris. He's not going to be the first option, but even this most recent game, and he did miss some time. He still played a good amount of snaps. Last game, 3 catches for 18 yards. This is when he was supposed to be the de facto number one guy, a veteran guy. Oh, he's spent years with Baker Mayfield. Come on, Sterling Shepard. Him and Baker are best friends. They're going to be fantastic together. And it just wasn't totally the case. So 3 for 18 against Atlanta, 1 for 15 against Baltimore. Again, we know all the injuries that happened. New Orleans, again, 3 for 23. That's when he really kind of stepped up. The touchdown, he has 1 touchdown this season. That was the first game against Atlanta on Thursday Night Football.
Yep.
It was 1 catch for 4 yards. That was his only catch in the game. And the Eagles game is his best one, 3 for 51. So he has it in him. But I don't know if the Bucs can rely on that, week in and week out. So I think that's kind of the big question when it comes for Sterling Shepard specifically.
Yeah, and what is intriguing about Shepard is his ability to play in the slot. Like of all the Bucks receivers against the Falcons, he played about 56% of his
Yeah.
snaps in the slot, which led the team. So they really like him there. And I think his ability to create separation, you kind of saw that against the Eagles. He can still run routes really sharply, but it's getting downfield enough to really stretch the offense and move the ball downfield. I don't know if Shepard has that. And when he's on the field, it's always like, is he going to get injured? Because he left
Yeah.
the game against the Falcons with a hamstring injury. His tenure with the Giants at the end, it was just injury after injury. Can you rely on him? I think with the way the Bucs receiver room is right now, you have to play and give him some reps, especially you mentioned the friendship with Baker Mayfield. But at the same time, Matt, you also kind of want to give guys like Jarrett and McMillan snaps and opportunities, because when you look at the big picture of things, and Paul kind of alluded to the draft needs going into the future, you look at Mike Evans, the hamstring injury, he's 31 years old. Chris Godwin, free agent after the season. What does the future of this wide receiver room look like? Right now is a prime opportunity to kind of see that future in the present, because if you think that Jarrett and McMillan are underwhelming, maybe you go and get a wide receiver in the first round. But if you see enough out of them, maybe going into next year, it's not so big of a need. So you kind of have to play GM a little bit, look at the future, look at the present, really evaluate where the guys are.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit of a tryout for everyone. And yeah, Sterling Shepard, yes, he missed part of the game with the hamstring injury. He still played 45 snaps. That
Yeah.
was still 25 more snaps than Rakim Jarrett. McMillan led the way with 59. Trey Palmer had 51. So McMillan and Palmer were not that far off. And really, Sterling Shepard wasn't either. Ryan Miller played even more than Rakim
Yeah.
Jarrett. 30 snaps for Ryan Miller. And like I said, 20 for Rakim Jarrett. We also have to remember Sterling Shepard got hurt in training camp too. So for everything you said about previously with the Giants and things of that nature, it's happened already with Tampa Bay. So I like that you can get 3 catches for 51 yards from Sterling Shepard like he did against the Eagles. But at this point, the Bucs need consistency of a guy that can go like 5 catches for 70 yards each game versus
Yep.
one really good game and then nothing for 4 weeks. And then, he blows up again and then goes quiet one more time. So I think the best way they have to do it is maybe Shepard is the guy that you kind of maybe not necessarily swap spots with, but instead of Shepard 45 and Jarrett 20, maybe do, Shepard 35 and Jarrett 30 or something like that. So you get Jarrett more snaps, or you take some away from McMillan and give that to Rakim Jarrett. So without question, I think Rakim has to be wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Who do you have as like 2 and 3 though? Like how do you balance out the rest of the room?
Yeah, so I would say McMillan probably 2 and Shepard 3. And McMillan last week, he played 59 snaps. So maybe you kind of lessen those a little bit to give Rakim more. So maybe 45 for McMillan, and then 40 or 45 for Jarrett. And then maybe knock Sterling down a peg, 30-35. With Trey Palmer, you really like his speed and his ability to really like open things up down the field. So maybe you still try to find ways to get him involved as well. But with Trey Palmer, still so raw. Like there's those moments like against the Eagles where he makes those big plays that you think, man, that's the next Deshaun Jackson right there. But then he drops a couple of passes and you're like, or he's been called for a lot of penalties as well. And you're like, well, why isn't he on the bench? So I think right now you go Jarrett, McMillan, follow it up with Sterling Shepard, kind of get that veteran role player presence in there, and then also put Trey in for some plays as well.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't have too many issues. I don't know. I think I'm a little higher on Trey Palmer than a lot of people are. So I may even, man, it's tough. I may even do Shepard 2, Trey Palmer 3, and Jalen McMillan 4. And I know McMillan had more catches, but
yeah,
I don't know. I was saying this to Scott the other day. I'm curious what you think about it. Like, I almost look at Jalen McMillan the same way that I look at Rachaad White, where something just seems off when they are involved in a play. Like, I look at Rachaad White, and it's just like, man, Bucky Irving's so much faster. He's making guys miss. Like, you have full-blown confidence that Bucky Irving is going to make a play, where Rachaad, it's like, things need to fall into place for Rachaad White to be successful. Same thing with Shan Tucker when he gets more than 7 snaps. It's like, Shan Tucker sees what he needs to do. He sees the end goal. He can go and get it. Rachaad White needs open space and things like that. And it's not fair for Rachaad White because he's been way more productive than Jalen McMillan has. But I don't know. I just look at McMillan, and it's like he's a horse that's late to get out of the gate when there's like a race going on. It's the last one. It gets stuck by the little door, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. Something, it just seems a bit off with Jalen McMillan. But luckily, with the receivers, Adam, while the production's been kind of or at least was last week with the Atlanta Falcons, the Bucs have had the emergence of Cade Otton. Like, he's played out of his mind the past couple of weeks. The only thing that may slow him down is that he shaved his mustache, and Baker Mayfield was quite upset about that today, saying that that mustache Cade Otton is a different breed. But my question is, can he sustain that type of production that he's had really over the last 2 weeks for this game on Monday against the Chiefs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do want to just go back to McMillan real quick. When you mentioned,
please do.
Him being late out of the gate and being a horse running. The frustrating part is with McMillan so far, and with Rachaad White to an extent, is that when the horse gets going, when he is out of the gate, like he gets down like quicker than anyone. And there's so much potential there for him to be that thoroughbred star player, but it just hasn't happened yet. And so I think that kind of alludes to other guys really get more of that timeshare. But when you look at Cade Otton, and I don't know, Matt, without the mustache, he may not be that same player that's had 181 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the past 2 games. But for Otton, this is a big test, and it's a big matchup for him to prove that he's a starting caliber tight end, because he's going up against Leo Chanel of the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to be the primary linebacker covering him. And with Chanel, also shout out to him, former Wisconsinite, he is the Chiefs' best coverage player per Pro Football Focus. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, really athletic for his size, and he's going to match up really well with Cade Otton. And I think Otton probably isn't going to have as big of an impact in this game as he has in the two previous games because of that reason. I mean, the Chiefs defense, Matt, they may not have that star power when you look across and you see Pro Bowlers everywhere, but they get it done. They're fifth in the league in points allowed, and they're able to really shut guys down in creative ways. So for Otton, you'd like to see that production and that chemistry with Mayfield continue to show itself, but I don't know if it does.
I completely understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. And this isn't to say that the production from Cade Otton is going to come to a complete halt, and we're not going to see this, against the 49ers or against the Giants after the bye, whatever the case may be. I think it's more of a credit to the Chiefs defense and an understanding of, okay, they don't have Mike and Chris. They have to stop the run. But in terms of the passing game, you got to stick with the running backs. But as far as skill position players at wide receiver and tight end, I think the Chiefs are going to look at this matchup and say their most productive receiver over the past 2 weeks has been Cade Otton, who again reached the end zone twice last game as well. We cannot let Cade Otton beat us. So I think the Chiefs, one of the great things they do, besides having, Chris Jones, who's an absolute beast, and a lot of other talented players, is they know how to take away the weakness. They know how to take away the strength of their opponent on offense. And offensively for the Chiefs, they know how to attack the weakness better than anybody else. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cade Otton gets double-teamed, maybe not every single play, but gets double-teamed a fair amount. And they say, all right, Baker Mayfield, beat us with Sterling Shepard, beat us with Jalen McMillan and all the other wide receivers that we talked about. Because right now, the Bucs have shown that they can score points. And they've done it with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they did it without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin last game. And really, the Monday night game when Mike got out relatively early in that one. But there's a formula to how the Bucs can be successful and score points, and that's running the football, and it's really the running backs and the emergence of Cade Otton over the 2 weeks. The Bucs have not shown that they can put up close to 30 points or whatever it may be, relying on all those other wide receivers. It's not all their fault. I mean, there's no replacing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But if I'm the Chiefs, I stick to that aggressive nature that they really have since Steve Spagnuolo has been there as a defensive coordinator. And you force Baker Mayfield to have to look at all the other wide receivers, because I don't know if they can get the job done against the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you kind of wonder if Steve Spagnuolo, he's going to maybe load the box more. And you mentioned like double teaming Cade Otton, trying to stop the running backs. And like if you blitz Mayfield, you're forcing him to get the ball out quickly to guys like Sterling Shepard and Jalen McMillan, who they haven't really shown the ability to get down the field and make big plays. And so I think that will be probably the strategy Kansas City goes with, because the Bucs, to win this game, they have to control the time of possession. They need that ground game to really get rolling from the start, to keep themselves in it, to keep that momentum in such a loud environment too. I think that's another factor that you have to consider, not just for the miscommunication on defense, but for guys communicating on offense. I think everybody needs to be on the same page. When you look at Arrowhead Stadium on a Monday night, Patrick Mahomes is out there slinging it. That crowd's going to be roaring. And so I think the Bucs are really going to rely on that run game. But if it's not going, Matt, and you're relying on these wide receivers, I don't know how they put up even what they did, not just last week, but even getting the 20 points.
Yeah, Arrowhead is one of the toughest places to play. And because Spagnuolo loves to send the house, loves to bring several guys at once, a lot of times, even when you know, and like you kind of know the blitz is coming with the Chiefs, they're not trying to disguise it. They're letting you know what they're doing, and that's part of their strategy. But a lot of times when a blitz is coming, the Bucs have a lot of choice routes, which means, if the defense looks one way, you run one certain way. If the defense looks another way, if there's a blitz, you cut your route off shorter or you go longer, whatever the case may be. You trust that with Baker and Mike and Chris. I don't know if you trust that with Baker and Jalen McMillan and Baker and everyone we talked about, Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, whatever the case may be. So there might be a couple more of miscommunications, the missed touchdown to Jalen McMillan based on the wrong route that he ran in the game against the Falcons. I don't know if the Bucs can get away with that. This is a game where, and sure, the Chiefs have not really blown out teams. Their biggest win is 13 points against the New Orleans Saints. But this is a game where the Bucs need to keep it close in the sense of they can't vary from their system, their plan, how they want to go about beating the Chiefs, at least offensively. Because offensively, I think it has to be methodical. I mean, if they score an 80-yard touchdown, more power to them. But this has got to be run it, run it, run it. I would run it as many times as possible. I don't care if Baker Mayfield has less than 10 passing attempts. If the Bucs are scoring, who the hell cares how they get it done? And it was actually Timothy Fitzgerald, who's now been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for 2 months now. Thank you, Timothy. We appreciate all your support. Timothy says, strong run game, stout O-line. Why not more play-action bombs? I'm all for the play-action because it doesn't matter if your run game is good or bad. The stats show that play-action has been effective, but it's even that much better when you do have a good running game.
Yeah, and I think the play action, that's a great point, Timothy, would really open things up, especially let's say the Bucs get a couple first downs, running the ball, and then maybe on a first down play, hit them with the play action and catch the defense off guard. I think that would be a great way to really get the passing game going and more involved. But I agree with you, Matt. You really want to rely on these running backs, and it'll be interesting to see the rotation of the running backs. I know you mentioned Shan Tucker's usage kind of being bizarre. I mean, he only got 7 snaps. One of them was a kneel down at the end of the first half. How much do you involve him in this game when you need that physical running back to really set the tempo? Bucky Irving, for as great as he is, elusive, making guys miss, you want to see more Shan Tucker too, right?
For sure. And that's the beauty of the Bucs running back room is like you have all your choices, all your picks of the running backs that you want to use in the game. Very much like if you want a Celsius energy drink, you have so many different choices of Celsius, which of course is the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. Check out all of the great flavors that Celsius has, including the Arctic Vibe, my personal favorite, and the sparkling watermelon lemonade that you can see on the screen there as well. So if you need to know where to go, find a Celsius, go to the store locator on their website, punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Could be Walmart, Health and Fitness Store, Target, 7-Eleven, Publix, or a Stop and Shop. Maybe, if you're lucky, you can get one at your local bodega.
Bodega.
And once you realize you love Celsius and you want as much Celsius as possible, you can go get it in bulk over on Amazon with the subscribe and save. I recommend getting that variety pack because there's so many great flavors of Celsius. And you have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. Just make sure you drink at Celsius Energy Drinks, the official energy drinks of PewterReport.com. But yeah, to get back to the running back room conversation, there is just no excuse for Shan Tucker to only have 7 snaps in a game. I mean, we are talking about a guy that was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 games ago. What precedent are the Bucs sending if you can have literally the best offensive game in the week compared to really anybody else in the NFL, and 2 weeks later you are seldom used? And don't get me wrong, Rachaad White played pretty good, solid. I wouldn't say amazing or fantastic. Bucky Irving played solid to good. He had the greatest 1-yard run of all time, and I don't think people will forget that one anytime soon. But it was not like Bucky Irving and Rachaad White became unstoppable and, looked like Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, and LaDainian Tomlinson combined. Like they weren't insane. So to not use Shan Tucker at all and to only run the ball with him twice when you were backed up by your end zone, it felt like malpractice of just running back usage. These guys are too good to not use all 3 on the field. And I understand you got to establish a rhythm You got to get guys involved. But they could have done that and still used Shan Tucker way more than they did. Now, the problem is Shan Tucker's not a good pass blocker. But you know what? I don't care. Play him on just first and second down. He'll still get the job done.
Matt, that was just what I was going to say. Use Shan Tucker on early downs when you want to kind of establish that run game. Or when you look at like the second and third quarter where the Bucs are getting outscored, use Shan Tucker to get some yards and move the ball down the field. Or at the end of the game, when the defense is tired, you saw what he did against the Saints. Every single run he had was going 8 to 10 yards, first down after first down. He's capable of doing that. You saw that 2 weeks ago. It's really misusage when you have a guy that had 192 total yards, had a bunch of big plays, and then he just goes to riding the pine. Like, it doesn't make sense. And Liam Cohen, for as bright of an offensive mind as he is, he has to find ways to get Shan Tucker involved. You know what Rachaad White's strengths are as a receiver. Bucky Irving, he can really make guys miss. He's a great change of pace back, and maybe even more than that. But Shan Tucker, he has some talent as well.
He does. And curious as well with the usage, because Bucky Irving has a chronic toe injury that has been affecting him since he was a wee lad, if you will. This kind of leads into this super chat. We'll talk about the injuries in general, but Eric Moreno had a $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Eric, who says, any concern about Levante David's status for Monday? He seemed fine after the game, and he came back in the game. Shepard came back in the game, too. So, yeah, Bucky's injury, Levante's, that's kind of how it all ties together. So, we were at practice today. There was no Bucky. There was no Levante. No Sterling Shepard. No Greg Gaines. The injury report still has not come out just yet. I don't know at this point if we're going to get it by the time that this show is done. Maybe it's because I think there's an hour time difference in Kansas City or in Missouri.
Central time.
So the Bucs might not put theirs out until the Chiefs are ready to put theirs out. You see that sometimes, especially when it's like an East Coast team and a West Coast team. There is a chance Levante David came out after the media had to go back inside. There's also a chance that he just had a Veterans Day off, or they gave him the day off because that ankle is bothering him, but he's Levante David and he's been around for 13 seasons and doesn't need to practice as much as some of the other linebackers that may need some practicing. And so it's tough to say at this point whether Levante David can play or not. Sterling Shepard, I think, would be a similar scenario of just a veteran guy that doesn't need to play as much because he's older. I think the big one will be Bucky, though. Bucky and also Tyke Smith, who did practice today, wore a non-contact jersey, just a black jersey. So he still needs to go through concussion protocol. At this point, it's kind of difficult to say exactly who can be available. But I think Bucky and Todd Bowles kind of said it today, like, we're keeping him out of practice so he can play in the games. But the biggest concerns are Bucky, without a doubt, and Levante David and Tyke Smith as well. But that's your injury update for everybody.
Yeah, and based on Bowles' comments today, I thought it was really telling that, like, Irving, it's going to be a season-long issue. Like, that's really surprising that toe affects him that much, but kind of holding him out of practice during the week so he can be ready to go on Sunday or game day makes a lot of sense. But for Levante David, Sterling Shepard, seeing like Levante, he's probably going to play, especially based on the fact that he did return. And then Sterling Shepard looks likely to go as well.
Next to Timothy Fitzgerald, and we'll get back to the linebackers in just a second. But Timothy Fitzgerald with the $2 super chat, thank you very much, says Tucker in equals run. That sells the play action even better. Yeah, that's a little bit of a loophole in a sense because, yeah, you don't want Tucker in on every passing play because he's a good receiver as well. He has a receiving touchdown this year in his game against the New Orleans where he won Offensive Player of the Week. Made the catch on my phone. Nice. That was falling off my desk.
That was good.
Better hands than Alan Lazard, and who's not playing tonight. But what was I saying? But when you run the play action, it at least freezes the linebackers. So they're not going to, unless it's like a full-on blitz, they have to at least respect the run a little bit, which will give Baker Mayfield time, and hopefully somebody can be open. I think there's a way to keep Shan Tucker on the field without necessarily telegraphing it either, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like with Shan Tucker, when he's on the field, like you assume it's either going to be a run, or if there's another running back on the field, that they'll involve him as well. But I think there is ways to kind of get Shan Tucker involved without necessarily giving away the game plan. I mean, you mentioned like on first and second downs, keeping him out there, even if it is a play action play. Tucker's dynamic enough to hold his own, either as a pass blocker or get out and run a route. I mean, he did that and had a big, like 30-something yard touchdown against the Saints. I think there is a way to get him involved, and that's something that should be done more going forward, especially when you look at Liam Cohen running that 21 personnel, and even had a play where he got all three running backs involved and kind of had a 4 vertical play last week.
Yeah, I love the pony package. Is when 2 running backs are on the field at the same time. Hopefully we can get a good amount of that. I also feel like at some point, you got to do baptism by fire and just see if Shan Tucker can do it. Now, if he struggles heavily on the first 2 or 3 times, then you kind of scrap it and maybe he doesn't play as much, or you go to plan B or plan C or whatever the case may be. But I think you have to at least try it out a little bit and, get to that pony package. I know Liam Cohen had said last week, like, you can't run it 55 times. That doesn't mean you can run it you can't run it just a little bit more than you typically do in that package, because it's been successful and it gives the Chiefs a different thing that they have to plan and account for. So I want to see the pony package as much as possible, just as much as I want to see the great food over at Walk-Ons on a plate in front of me.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered walk-ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger. Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy. And speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to walk-ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-ons for the win.
Check out Walk-On sooner rather than later. You can go this evening, get some great deals with their happy hours from 3 to 6, and then from 9 until close. Watch some Thursday night football tonight, some hockey and basketball as well. They have fantastic deals. $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints. Some starters like fried pickles, boom boom shrimp, all great things of that nature. There are 3 Walk-Ons in the Tampa Bay area. There's one over in Lakeland. There's one in Wesley Chapel by SR. And there's one pretty close to Raymond James Stadium over in Midtown, close to where I live. So check out Walk-Ons. See all the fantastic deals that they have. They're awesome on Saturdays and Sundays as well with their game day specials. You got $4.49 pints. You can get $5.99 pints for 22 ounces, or 22 ounces of the beer for $5.99, I should have said. And that's of Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, and Budweiser. $5 Heineken Silvers and $5 Neutrals as well. Have a great time watching all the sports that are possible over at Walk-Ons. I wanted to get, you know what? Let's get to the question first, then we'll get to the linebackers. Wasp says, what is your favorite horror movie, Matt/Adam? You have anything in mind, Adam?
So I'm not a big horror movie guy. Matt, you would know I'm not really a movie guy in general.
Yeah.
But when I was little, I watched Chucky, and I was absolutely traumatized. So that's why I don't delve into horror movies too much. If I had to pick one, I like Halloween with Michael Myers. I think that's a classic.
Very cool. Very cool. So I also am not a huge fan of horror movies. I don't particularly like to go to the movies and be scared by something. With that said, I was always fond, I shouldn't say fond, that's kind of a weird way to say it, but the genre of the like Halloween, Freddy, and Jason type of things. If I had to pick out of those three, I would say Jason Voorhees was probably those movies I like the most. I like the Freddy vs. Jason movie too. I thought that was pretty good. I don't know if this falls into a horror movie, like if this is in the same category. So my answer is Jason. I guess that's which one is that? Friday the 13th?
Friday the 13th, yeah.
Yeah, so I say either Friday the 13th or I've been rewatching a lot of the movies Scream with David Arquette and Courtney Cox and the main character is slipping my mind. But this holiday season, this Halloween season, I've been watching Scream a lot more. So I guess I'm going to go with Scream for now, but not the biggest horror movie type of guy. Also, with that said, I am a big fan of the scary movie, like the comedy movies that kind of spoof.
They're
on
coming
all
back.
That. And yeah, the Wayans brothers just announced that they are coming back to make Scary Movie 6 or whatever the case may be. My favorite scary movie in that genre is, I know the Wayans brothers did the first two, and I do like them, but I think it's the third one when they spoof like 8 Mile and Signs and stuff like that.
Was that the one with Snoop Dogg? I thought he was a
I don't know if it's been a while since I watched it, but Kevin Hart's in it. He's got like a very small role, but yeah, they kind of spoof 8 Mile, and I always thought that was funny. Fat Joe's in it too, very briefly. So you never know what you're going to see in those. But anyway, appreciate the question. It is Halloween, so happy Halloween to everybody. The big question, though, is, and what's really scary, is what Tampa Bay has at linebacker, Adam, because we talked about Levante David's injury and what the case may be for him. But I think it's a really bad sign that Todd Bowles just doesn't have an answer besides KJ Britt. And it's like everybody else isn't prepared enough to play an inside linebacker besides KJ Britt. And I thought Rick Stroud asked a great question. He set up the question fantastic, where he was like, KJ Britt has half a sack, no tackles for loss, no interceptions, no forced fumbles, all this stuff. He made 10 tackles last game, but he has none of these other things. Like, how is there no other options? Or how do you keep playing him when that's all he's done? And for Todd Bowles just to be like, well, he had 10 tackles, and that's his production, even though that's happening 7 to 8 yards down the field. It truly feels like Todd Bowles has no answers for linebacker besides KJ Britt.
And Matt, I don't know if like Bucs fans don't want to see it, but when we watch the games, I don't know if you want to see KJ Britt out there playing 70 snaps for 9 more games. Like when the production just isn't there. And 8 games into the year, you would think JJ Russell, Vi Jones, they would sign somebody. They just released Kalen DeLoach a couple of days ago, but addressing the position more than they have. I mean, KJ Britt just isn't an answer. I mean, the past couple of weeks, we've kind of talked a lot about his issues, but for Todd Bowles to kind of like, he defended KJ Britt just because Rick Stroud said 10 tackles. He's like, oh, he had double-digit tackles, guys. It's like, it's not enough. And at some point, especially with Levante David, if he gets injured again, let's say, or he can't play 100% of the game, like going forward, like JJ Russell and KJ Britt, that it really isn't the answer. And I think if the Bucs were to make a move at the trade deadline, getting an inside linebacker just makes a lot of sense.
It makes the most sense because I think it's their biggest weakness on the defensive line, on the defense currently at the moment. So here were some of the things that Bowles had to say. I think it's important for everybody to hear it. So the first question before what Rick laid out, it was about, because let's remember, the original plan was not just to be all KJ Britt. It was supposed to be Savase Dennis as well in that platoon, but then Dennis got injured for the rest of the year. And so Bowles essentially asked, like, how come there's no more platoon? Like, there's nobody else that you could put in that spot? And Bowles said there was not one ready at the time. We've been getting them ready the whole time, but they were not ready when he got hurt. They were not ready at the time or could do the things that he could do. Some of the things that he could do changes a lot of the things that we can do. Then he was asked about how there's no replacement for KJ Britt, even though he has like no stats. And he goes, like you said, he had 10 tackles, That's where his production is. We'd like to get that production from everybody on defense. But again, not when it's 15 yards down the field.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we haven't gotten it at this time. We've got to keep working at it. We have packages to tilt people, and you probably can single everybody out from a coaching standpoint and player standpoint on defense to do some things better. It's not just a KJ thing. I do agree with that last part. It's not just KJ Britt.
No.
There have been plenty of other mistakes, but Britt has been the biggest problem, I think, in a lot of people's opinions. And then the last thing is if he would be hesitant to bring in a new linebacker based on the guys in the room not being ready to play this defense. And he says, anybody coming in from the outside, there would be a hesitation factor. At the same time, as coaches, we've got to do different things. We've got to be better at putting people in position where they need to be. They just have to do their job. So a lot to digest there. But Adam, I get that you have a lot of rookies and young guys there after Levante David and KJ Britt. But we're going into week 9 of this season. You had OTAs, minicamp, training camp, and half the season. You can't possibly tell me that there's nobody in the building right now that you can't just trot out there and play linebacker and can't do the job that KJ Britt is doing.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's kind of telling by Bowles that nobody else is ready in the room. I mean, somebody has to, they have some knowledge of the defense. They can go out there at least for a little bit. Maybe like the platoon in the first half of the season where it was Sebastian Dennis and KJ Britt, it worked. Why not try it again? It can't be much worse. We've said this before. Playing KJ Britt, you know what it is. An alternative option cannot be worse than a guy that's the second. I think he's the second worst inside linebacker now, 80th out of 81. I mean, you know what you have in him. Last year when KJ Britt came in versus the Packers, I mean, and then in the weeks going forward, it was KJ Britt on the first couple downs, and then Devin White came in. I mean, and then to begin this season, it was KJ Britt and Sebastian Dennis. I mean, you can't have KJ Britt play the whole game. I think that goes without saying. That's obvious at this point, and he just doesn't get it, and he's making excuses about it.
Well, if Todd Bowles continues to just leave KJ Britt in at linebacker without making any adjustments, and the Bucs offense continues to play pretty well, I mean, you could just pencil in the over in every Bucs game for the rest of the season, and it's hitting 5 games in a row. So if you're going to bet on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or really any NFL game or any sport, the best place to go and do it is over at BetUS. You can sign up using the promo code PEWTER, that's PEWTER, and get up to 125% in bonuses on your first 3 deposits. A lot of other gambling companies, you get a deposit when you first sign up, but not with your first 3 deposits like BetUS does. They also have 10% gambler's insurance as well. So they have the best percentages to give you. They have the best props. They're awesome with live betting. They're great as well with your one-on-one customer service. So check out BetUS. Use the promo code PEWTER. You got the NFL and college football in full swing. You have the NHL just started, NBA. UFC just had a great fight last week, but they got pay-per-views. They have pay-per-views coming up all the time. Can't bet on baseball right now because the season is done. The Yankees lost. They are losers, losing in 5 in the World Series to the Dodgers. They had a 5-0 lead in yesterday's game, and they blew it. They stink, and they're going to lose Juan Soto. So if you live bet the Dodgers yesterday when they were down 5-0, you probably got astronomical odds. So bet on everything else. You can bet on baseball when it comes back in the spring. Check out our friends over at BetUS using the promo code PEWTER. That's PEWTER. Kind of leaning into the linebacker thing, Adam, you had an article about the Bucs' future needs, or way too early team needs for offense and the defense. You want to preview that a little bit so that people can check it out over at pewterreport.com?
Yeah, so be sure to check out both stories. The offense came out first, and then the defense just came out yesterday. So on the topic of linebackers, address that first. I think there's one guy out there, Matt, that they could even trade for now that wouldn't cost much. And he's a free agent after the season. He's still young enough to be re-signed. And that's Robert Spillane of the Raiders. And through 8 games, he has 79 tackles. And he has a lot more production than KJ Britt up to this point. Last year, he had over 140 tackles, 3 interceptions, can get after the quarterback. For the Raiders that are 2-6 right now, they're not going to win many games this year. So they should be looking to move players like Spillane. Yeah. And he's a captain for that team. And he looks like that physical, old school linebacker, but he also can make plays. And I don't think he would cost more than maybe a 5th or a 6th round pick. I think that could be somebody that could really shore up the team. Looking at the other positions defensively heading into next year, I think cornerback is a big one, especially if Jamel Dean, who's injured right now, he's had some availability concerns throughout his career. If they move on from him, getting another corner in the early rounds, and then outside linebacker, I think as well. Yaya Diaby and Chris Braswell, the team hopes are the future, but with JTS and Anthony Nelson free agents, that's a position they should address. Moving over to offense briefly, wide receiver, again, we mentioned it earlier, the subject of today's show. I mean, if they had a first-round talent at wide receiver, really wouldn't be having this conversation, but they don't right now with Mike and Chris gone. They have a lot of guys that are kind of vying for snaps. Hopefully one of them emerges, but if it doesn't, that's a big need. Tight end, I think with Cade Otton playing well, not so much of a need. You would still like another guy there. And then lastly, left guard. Ben Bredesen was signed as a stopgap, but there are other guys they could target as well.
Bredesen's been a pleasant surprise. I think he's at the point where it wouldn't stop the Bucs from like drafting their guard of the future, their left guard of the future, because they have their right one with Cody Mauch. But I think at this point, and there's still half the season to go, and you hope it doesn't change, but you never know what you're going to see. Bredesen's played himself into, and he's played well enough to get another contract and be the starter for the Bucs next season. You got to remember, they have Elijah Klein. Maybe they're, trying to develop him into eventually being a future starter, but he was a late round pick for a reason. I think you're spot on with everything you said. I think it's a great suggestion as well with Spillane at linebacker. It's tough at outside linebacker, man. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier because you drafted Yaya Diaby 2 seasons ago, a 3rd round pick. You drafted Chris Braswell last year as a 2nd round pick. I mean, you need other guys that just aren't first rounders to be contributors and be helpful. And certainly, Yaya Diaby is helpful and he's the best outside linebacker and edge rusher on this team at the moment. But you look at Zion McCollum was a 5th round pick or whatever the case may be, and is making an impact. Robert Hainsey at this point is kind of in that same category of a late round pick that's been an impact for the Bucs. He's obviously not starting right now, but he was helpful in that game against New Orleans. People need to get picked up here and there. Bucky Irving, 4th round pick, has already been an immediate guy to make an impact. So edge rusher is certainly a concern. I mean, free agency may be the way to help that out more than the draft. I think wide receiver and inside linebacker are top 2, and you can whatever your choice is for 1 and 2. There's not a wrong answer with that one because McMillan could eventually be wide receiver 1, but he's not that right now. And we'll see how Mike Evans looks when he comes back. But if he gets injured again this season, every question about next year is going to be, can Mike stay healthy? Is Mike over the hill? Is he on the other side of things with his career? Can he be relied upon to be a number 1 guy just based on the injuries alone? And if that's the case, you're not going to get rid of Mike Evans, but you have to turn the page in terms of Mike can be on this team as a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4, as a veteran possession guy and a leader of this team without a doubt.
Yeah.
But you got to start looking at other options for the future of your team. And maybe you had it with Chris Godwin, but now with that serious injury, there's really no guarantee with Chris Godwin. And you could be looking at 2 new starting inside linebackers next year because you just can't. You trust Rosé Dennis when he's on the field, but you don't know when any injury for him will kind of flare up as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think the needs for this team are a lot more pronounced than they were last year. I mean, you see inside linebacker, that's a glaring need. Wide receiver, you're
Yeah.
starting to see that it's becoming a glaring need unless Chris, he bounces back, becomes the same guy. Mike Evans bounces back and has a great year again at 32. You can't count on that, though. And when there's holes starting to emerge from the star players, maybe kind of reaching the point where they had their most production and now they're kind of on the downslope, you really have some needs at some big key positions. And it'll be interesting because you only have one first round pick. You only have one second round pick. There's only so
Yeah.
many needs you can address in the draft. What would they choose to do in free agency? Like this past offseason, they signed Randy Gregory. A couple of years ago, they signed Shaq Barrett. Could they try to target another outside linebacker in free agency? And hopefully, unlike Gregory, it pans out and then kind of go after some bigger positions like wide receiver and inside linebacker. It'll be interesting, but it's kind of concerning that at least with outside linebacker, you draft these guys like Diaby, like Braswell, and you haven't seen them fully like pan out and become stars yet, because that's one of the hardest linebackers to get in free agency. They get paid a ton of money.
They do. And even like JTS hasn't been the guy that you want him to be. I mean, you look at the star-studded group of Shaq and JPP. You just mentioned Shaq was signed. JPP was traded for.
Yeah.
He wasn't developed in Tampa Bay. He was a finished product by the time that he got to Tampa Bay. So you're not exactly sure who you can count on in that outside linebacker room. And that's what makes the, trading for someone right now, that's what makes it tough too, because you want to keep as many picks as possible and build your team that way, because the Bucs and Jason Light have done a great job when they've drafted a lot of their people, with the exception of really of outside linebacker. But one thing we can count on is the great, fantastic Pewter people, our Pewter Platinum members. So thank you to Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, and Eric McMillan for being Pewter Platinum members and subscribers to our YouTube channel. We will have our Pewter Insider tomorrow coming up at 3:30. It's typically at 1:30, but with the schedule moved around a little bit this week with the Bucs playing on Monday night, it is at 3:30. We'll talk about how the Bucs defense can stop the Chiefs. We will also answer any and all questions and comments from our Pewter Platinum and Premier members as well. Of course, you can find all of our content on pewterreport.com, which you could also access that and plenty of other sports over at Autograph. Of course, Autograph was founded by former Bucs quarterback Tom Brady, and he founded it on the belief that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fan. So Autograph, it's what you already do as a fan. It's reading blogs, listening to podcasts, watching breakdowns, and it's all put into one place just for you, where you can earn rewards as well. It's absolutely free. You can get it on the Android and iPhone. You can get it for all different sports, not just the NFL. You do NBA, WNBA, get ready for the offseason in baseball, because, again, the Yankees lost the World Series yesterday and were eliminated. You got fantasy football and the NCAA sports as well. So you can read Pewter Report news, watch Pewter Report news, and videos and podcasts, all on the Autograph app using the promo code Pewter. And just a reminder for everybody, and that's PEWTER, we have the Pewter pregame show coming up on Monday at 9 a.m. Scott and I will talk about the biggest matchups coming up. And then the Pewter Game Day show, myself and Josh Capo, that's at 8:15 at night when the game kicks off. Again, it's the only show in town, the only game in town. Bucs versus Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Should be very exciting. Hopefully, the Bucs can pull off a big-time upset. So, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Also, a reminder to please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will see you soon. See you on Monday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.